and welcome to Check 1 2, where we give you the lowdown on testicular cancer by speaking to survivors, advocates and supporters of testicular cancer awareness here at the world famous podcast studio Glasgow. So welcome to today's podcast, where we delve into the deeply moving and inspiring story. We're honoured to have Tracy Tombides with us, and she is the mother of the late Dylan Tombides, a talented West Ham footballer who was taken far too soon because of testicular cancer. Tracy Lee will share her personal journey, the challenges and triumphs of supporting Dylan through his illnesses, and how his legacy lives on through the foundation that she started in his name. Join us as we explore the impact of testicular cancer and the importance of awareness and early detection. Ladies and gentlemen, Tracy Lee Tombides. But just to get started, it's just a case of if you want to do like a little introduction of yourself, you know, and your background, and obviously, you know, talking about Dylan and the foundation and things like that, and then we can just have a chat and go for there if you want.
Yeah, sure, Paul, no problem. Well, my name's Tracy Tombides, and I founded the charity DT38 in memory of my son Dylan. And DT38 stands for his initials, Dylan Tombides, and the number 38 is the shirt that West Ham retired in his honour. And if I can take you back to April or March 2011, Dylan had just turned 17. He was, had the biggest smile on his face. He was just loving life, and he'd just come back from Portugal. He'd been out there with the first team, and he found a lump on his testicle, and he didn't go down to the club at that point because the club were in a relegation battle, and he didn't want any attention to be taken away from what was going on. He just didn't want to create any fuss. So he went to his local GP, and the GP told him that he had a cyst and that people live with cysts every day, just to go on about his business and, keep an eye on it. So Dylan went back down to training, finished the season on the bench for the first team against Sunderland, and then flew out to Australia to join his teammates for the Under-17 World Cup. And it was while he was out there at the World Cup that he got pulled for a random drug test, and the results came back that he'd either taken a banned substance or he had a tumour, and Dylan knew straight away which one it was. So he, he was fighting a battle 3 months after he could have done. And for us, that could have very well been the difference with him being here today and us in a different direction. But we're here as it is. And the thing that struck me the most was when we took Dylan home to Perth in Western Australia to lay him to rest. We were talking at the wake with all his teammates and his family and friends, and none of them knew anything about the signs and symptoms of testicular cancer. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we raised awareness, and we didn't know what we wanted to do with DT38, and it was after that conversation that we were very sure what we wanted to do. We wanted to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of testicular cancer, and just change the stigma about men's health.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful thing to be able to go on and do, and especially after, a tragedy such as that. And I've found through conversations on this podcast that, in the time, since, Dylan's passing to even now, you're still finding that, doctors or GPs, whatever, are still making, I don't want to use the word mistake, but you're finding a lot of the conversations we've had, the guys who have, been told it's going to be nothing, it's going to be a cyst, or it's just a fatty lump, and guys are really having to fight just to get an ultrasound, and like you say, the earlier it's detected, it's going to be, hopefully better outcomes, and the fact that, that opportunity never arose for Dylan it's an absolute tragedy.
I agree with you. This is why the message for us to insist on an ultrasound if you present with any testicular issues, yes, it can be a number of things that aren't anywhere near as serious as testicular cancer, but why not test for the worst case scenario first, and work your way backwards instead of the other way around, when then it's too late. You've let this spread throughout your lymphatic system, and your chances of survival have decreased significantly. I just don't understand that mentality.
Yeah, and there seems to be this push among like young men and just men in general, where they try to tell us that we're really bad at seeking help for like illness of any kind. It's that typical male attitude of, oh, it'll be fine, and they try to tell us to get away from that. But when you turn up and you're told the same from a medical perspective, it's like, oh, it'll be fine. It's especially for me, who I was fortunate enough that I caught mine early enough. My GP was good at getting me that ultrasound, but again, some of the guys I've talked to who maybe went through more treatment than they ever needed to, it seems like such a problem that we have to address. And I think there's been times where I've heard that even about regular self-checks, that there's some doctors will say, oh, you don't have to check regularly because it will just instill fear in men. It's like, well, I don't know if that's necessarily true if we just normalise it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the wrong message to be giving anybody. Knowing your body and what's normal is the step to being on top of all illnesses, not just not just testicular cancer. It's any ailment. Yourself when you just don't feel right and you get dismissed, you go, no, I want a second opinion. I just want somebody else to have a look at it, because I don't know whether we're overworking our health system. I'm sure it is. But I just think that, there's a real big push for us to turn around and say to the guys, take matters into your own hands. Don't be pushed away. Use Dylan's example as a reason not to be pushed away, because yes, it's great to hear that it's nothing and that it's just a cyst. Don't worry about it. But what if it's not?
Yep.
Wouldn't you want to check? And I've had people say to me, this was prior to, I believe now that testicular cancer concerns are on the 2-week, must have an appointment within 2-week list now, which is fantastic. But prior to that, I'd have people that would say, I can't get an appointment for, 6 weeks or something like that. And that is more stressful. That is more to worry about, because, that's when your mind plays all the games in the world, doesn't it? It starts telling you that, it could be worse, it could be this, you might not see this, you might not be able to do this, So, yeah, I think that the mental health side of the delay is far outweighs any concerns about being dismissed and checking every month. That's for sure. The worst case scenario is death in this scenario, in this situation. So, why not check for that first? And, to ask somebody to wait 6 months, with already a history of an issue in that area, that is just, that is bordering on malpractice, I believe, because I don't see how you can be giving the best to your patient when you have to do that. For sure. I may have, or I may not, I'm not going to confirm. I've told people that, suggest there's a history of testicular cancer in the family, and just say that you must get you want a scan. It's terrible. You've got to be a little bit misleading in a way, just so that you can get some attention to your own health. It's no good at all.
It's obviously a very niche podcast in terms of who it could reach, but if we've got one person makes that check because they've seen an episode or they've been interested, I think the thing that we're honoured for today is the fact that you've came on and a mother's perspective, and obviously not just as a mother's perspective, but the thing that we don't often talk about is that there is pretty severe outcomes with misdiagnoses or late diagnoses in testicular cancer, and I think there still is that stigma around it where there's almost it's just testicular cancer. You just get it removed or a bit of chemo and that's it. But actually, you know, like you kind of said at the top of this, you know, your lymphatic system down there is, you know, it's like a sponge. It just wants to grab those cancer cells and lift them in. You know, so I just wonder, you know, going back to that point and Dylan being so young when he was diagnosed, as a mother, you know, how was that for you, and what was your emotional journey through that with Dylan?
Yeah, I think Dylan made my emotional journey very easy. He got out of bed every morning to go down to training, and you know, he looked like he was always on top of the disease, if that makes sense. If
Yeah.
anyone in the house had a right to curl up in bed and not want to, get on with the talking to the world that day, it was Dylan, but he wasn't. He was like up out of bed every morning. So, when you see your son actually going about his normal day, you think to yourself, oh, he's on top of this, he's winning this battle. And, he would go down to training whenever he could. There was even periods where, as you're aware, you have different types of chemotherapy regimes. The first one he had was a 5-day intense with the 16-day recovery, so every 3 weeks. But the next one he had was as an outpatient, and he would schedule his outpatient there for Friday afternoon, so he could have his chemo, recover Saturday, Sunday, and be back into training for Monday, all the way through to Friday again. So when you're seeing your son do that, you're given in this case, a false sense of hope. But that hope gets you out of bed every morning. That hope gets you, it gets you to keep the family together, to try and function together as a family. Just to show even Dylan that everyone thinks you've got this, mate. Don't worry about it. And I genuinely did. I believed a lot in Dylan and his football and the person that he was, and I knew that he was destined for some message. And I genuinely actually thought it was that he was going to beat this. And we ended up going out to Germany in the end for treatment. And I still, at that point, before he was actually told there wasn't a cure for him anymore, and we took him out to Germany, I thought that he was going to show people that chemotherapy wasn't the only answer for treatment of cancer. That's how I had it in my head. That's how positive I remained. But yeah, I ended up having to not only look after Dylan and his emotional needs during this journey, but there was his brother's emotional needs as well, and his father's emotional needs. And I felt that I didn't have time to worry about mine. I felt that I was working. I had a wonderful employer who allowed me time off whenever Dylan was in hospital. So whenever Dylan was in hospital, I was in hospital. And, there wasn't a time where he spent a day alone. So, very grateful for the support that I had at the back end. And I think that just trying to be normal and doing the normal things and making it almost flippant, but with a big regard to the food that he takes. He ate very well. He trained very hard. He ate very well. He was very clean and that. So, yeah, it was just, I learned a lot about grief. I certainly learned a lot about grief during that period, and its ability to divide all things, and it did. So, yeah, my time during that period was just to try and keep it as normal as possible, and I said, I had a conversation with him one day, and I said to him, you're going to be a cancer patient for a very, very short time, and a professional athlete for a long time. So make sure your focus is on the one that's really important to you. And he just didn't want to be referred to as a cancer patient, and he concentrated on his football. That's what got him out of bed every morning, for sure.
Yeah. What a great message to try and convey as well, like to put that at the forefront. It's like, this is, potentially just a short period of time. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, it can be that. And to see your son, like you say, get out of bed, go to training, and it must have filled you with a kind of sense of pride in him as well, that the fact that, you know, this is the wee boy that you've raised to become this, you know, young man that's just facing this massive obstacle, you know, with a sense of, no, I'm just going to try and get through this. And on the flip side of that, you know, you're looking after his well-being, you know, the rest of your family's well-being, but then, you know, a typical mother, you've kind of sacrificed, like, you're looking after yourself in that sense. But how did you, like, was there any coping mechanisms that you were able to use through Dylan's diagnosis and treatment, you know, that you know, that you felt that helped keep you sane, you know, during this horrible period?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, my message to me was, well, if Dylan can get out of bed every morning, so can you. And I still, to this day, you know, there's, you know, I have Dylan's birthday that comes around. Obviously, his anniversary of his death is twofold for me. It happened on the 18th of April on Good Friday. So when Good Friday comes around, I've got that reminder, but also on the 18th of April, when that comes around, I've got it. So, you know, you know, he got out of bed every day. I get out of bed every day. You know, I often, if I'm facing adversity myself, or, you know, I'm being challenged in a way, I often refer to my, you know, what would Dylan do in this situation? He just would get out of bed and he'd get on with it. You know, he would be the best person or the best version of himself he could be during it. And so he, you know, watching him go through what he did taught me a lot about how I want to handle myself. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there's times when, you know, I can have this trigger, this song, or this, you know, just something that will burst me into tears. And I feel at times that my grief sits here all the time. Mm. It's at bay, and so it doesn't take much for it to actually topple over. So I find I can get myself to, you know, I can manage day to day very easily with being upbeat and jovial and everything like this, but I can be a blubbering mess, you know, given the slightest little thing will trigger so many things that go off. But, you know, I think the one thing that I'm probably the most proudest, two things that I'm the most proudest of, obviously the charity and the message that it's delivering. But I'm really, really proud of how Taylor, his brother, has come out of it as well, because, you know, it's he looked up to Dylan very much. He's 2 years younger, and we took the boys away from Australia at a very young age, 11 and 13. So they only ever really had they only really had each other as we were travelling around. Shared friends, but they were very, very close. And, you know, just to give him the tools to get through this. And, you know, there were some dark periods in his life, but he now knows that those dark periods, he's overcome them once, he'll overcome them again. And, you know, if they raise their head. So just being able to give my son the tools to get through this period is something I'm really proud of as well.
Yeah, and it must have been difficult as well, you know, like for Taylor being so young, and watching, you know, because there's only a few years between my brother and I, and my brother's one of my heroes. Do you know what I mean as well? And it's like I look up to my brother for lots of different things, and to see somebody, you know, that you look up to, you know, go through an illness. And when you speak on grief for you all, I think there's various types of grief as well. You know, people think about grief as just like because of, you know, that there's been a death, but actually, you know, grief can happen within even. I felt that sense of grief within my own diagnosis for myself. If that sounds weird, I know, but that, like, you're grieving over like maybe something that might not happen. You know, I think at the time when I was diagnosed, me and my wife were trying for a baby, and there was that grief of, can I have kids and stuff like that again? So there's various factors that can happen for everybody within that, and I think that's the biggest thing that we want to explore is, that there's guys who are going through it, but the emotional effect that it can have on all the family members, and especially, with the studies showing that if you have testicular cancer in the family, you have to be that little bit more vigilant. And was that something that was discussed with you guys, and was Taylor made aware of that at that time as well?
Well, I mean, Taylor had his own issue shortly after Dylan passed away with his testicle, and it turned out to not be testicular cancer, but it was that moment that you just went, oh no, not all this again. It was that, you go to that place where you go, oh, I'm just trying to breathe. I'm just trying to keep my head above water and breathe. But the flip side to that was, the moment Taylor mentioned this, he got seen and treated, straight away, because of the history. So that was, that was the flip side to it. But you're right. The grief side of it comes as you're losing your dreams. You're losing what you had planned. There's a sadness for loss of those opportunities or those things as well, where you actually go, and in your case, can we have children? This, I want to have children, and that dream. That dream you think is no longer a possibility or a reality. So the grief comes in many forms, and just being able to feel your emotions, accept them as them being that emotion for that reason, and then put them to the side and move on is something that's really important. And I feel I'm getting better and better at that every day.
Yeah. And during that time, what were the support systems like for you guys? Not just for Dylan, but for like you and the family. How was the support from friends and family, or even the club? Did you have like a strong support network within that?
Yeah, no, we did have a strong support network, especially given that we were a long way from home, if that makes sense. It was just our family up here. And, in all honesty, I think being away from everybody actually helped, because
right.
We were able to, the strength that we were able to create in our own environment was able to stay strong, where, you naturally have relatives and people that are concerned for you. And, when people are looking at you every day going, how are you? Are you okay? You start questioning it. And that's, I was glad that I had distance at that particular time, because I was able to create that strong environment that just kept everyone upbeat, or as upbeat as we possibly could. So, I had people I could lean on. Certainly Dylan had people that he leant on down at the club. The club were fantastic for the family as well. And, key friends up here. So, yes, there was always people to lean on and show support. And, it was just being normal. That's all Dylan wanted. He just wanted, he didn't want any extra attention. He just wanted to be normal and just wanted to be a part of everything that was football related. So, he wanted to go about his day like he was a footballer and not anything else.
Yeah. And, but I suppose as well, what we're finding is that, again, men, we find these types of things embarrassing, but was at that period, was Dylan, open with his teammates, and was he quite happy sharing, his diagnosis and his emotions with his teammates at that time?
Yeah, I believe so. He wasn't shy about it. Like, he would wake up one morning, and we did wake up one morning and went, I'm going off to have sex with a cup. Who's coming with me? So we had to go and freeze his sperm. And that was just, that's the attitude that he took into his everyday life sort of thing. He would go down to the club, and if somebody was mixing Nike and Adidas, he would give them a serve. He was very, very big with the banter, and he just, those guys really appreciated it, I think, because, I don't know how your situation was and how people were around you, but he just made it very easy for people to be normal around him. He didn't, no one felt uncomfortable around him. And so it made it very easy for him to keep interacting and joking and, mucking around like teenage boys do. So, they kept it as normal for him as possible, which was fantastic.
Yeah, no, I was much the same. I think Australians and Scots have a similar humour around around us. So I think we certainly, that was the biggest draw that I could take, was that I just had to be myself. And while I was going through it, I always thought about other people's reaction to it rather than my own. I was like, well, this is just something that's happening to me, and it's not until you kind of come out of it that you realise, how much you were maybe looking after other people's expectations or emotions. There'd be days where you'd be feeling rotten, but somebody would ask you, and you just go, nah, I'm okay, I'm fine. And I think that was always the hardest thing, was just the kind of days where you'd paint that smile on, but it helped me as well to do that. So yeah, much the same, and one of my first talks that I did with football clubs was at Livingston Football Club, and I can't remember the boy's name, but there was actually somebody who had played with Dylan in the talk. He was up, I think he was on loan at Livingston when we done it. That was just like last year, the year before, and so when we were going into the football club to give this talk to the players, he was one of the guys who was like, no, like, guys, this is important. Let's get in here and listen to what this guy's got to say, because obviously he had, played with Dylan and knew his story. So it was quite a different talk for me, because knowing what I knew about Dylan's story as well, like going into that, it really helped, try and get that message to these guys. Like, this is a serious thing. It's testicular cancer isn't just something that we can poo-poo as such, and I think, being able to kind of talk on those instances, because it's like anything, you don't want to be overly, you feel that you don't want to talk negatively, but the negative aspects of a testicular cancer diagnosis do happen. People get extremely unwell. People, obviously have died from it, and I think that's something that isn't talked about much as well. And and when you look at the age range of men that it kind of happens to, it's guys who are in the prime of their life, and not just physically but mentally, the impact that that's going to have, and to be able to kind of educate men, and obviously what you guys do with the foundation and spreading that awareness is something that it's odd that it's still needed to be such a kick down the door. And I think, as you guys as a foundation, what is it that you are trying to kind of push in terms of that awareness, and how do you go about doing that? Obviously using Dylan's story as your kind of your crux.
Yeah, well, Dylan's story, because he wasn't a survivor, it hits home. It hits home very hard that this is probably one of the most healthiest young men that I know, because obviously I put the food in his on the table for him, so I know what he ate. But he was dedicated to his sport, dedicated and everything like that, and he didn't survive. So this doesn't discriminate. This doesn't as you're aware, I'm sure, the youngest person has been born with testicular cancer, and the oldest person's been 69 years of age. So there's a huge gap, and it can happen to anyone at any time. So my message that I try and deliver, in the schools, in the communities, in the sports groups, and that in workshops, is that delay is deadly. You need to get educated, and that is actually an acronym of DIG, his nickname. That and a couple of other things. But I go into from the older boys, about 13 years and upwards. I go in and I have these medical testicles that actually teach the young guys and the men what it feels like to have a tumour. what it feels, what a tumour actually feels like, and it teaches them to how to check and how to examine every, in the mornings preferably, but whenever. And just to get to know what's normal, so that when something isn't right, that you will act straight away. And and I think this is where Dylan's delay is acknowledged more than ever, that this is a possibility for you. Yes, it's fantastic we've got survivors, and there is a 96 to 98% chance of survival when it's caught early. But if it's not, it decreases significantly. And here you are, you've got one of the healthiest young men I ever met, and he can't beat this disease. So it's something that you need to jump on early days. And I just think being able to deliver this message to the younger group of men sets them up for all the other ailments that they might have later on in life, getting to know their body, for other prostate cancer is a big one as well. It just sets them up for being aware to be able to react when things aren't right with the body. So the school education and the community workshops are pretty much what's driving me at the moment. I've got some exciting things in the pipeline, and I'm hoping to bring them to fruition and reach a lot more people on a global scale, which will be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing as well, hitting that middle kind of teenager, those 13, 14, 15-year-olds, because if we can normalise doing monthly checks and doing that and checking and knowing the signs and symptoms and knowing how to do it, that's certainly when we as Cahonas go into schools, and we're finding more and more schools are becoming a little bit more proactive in getting speakers like myself coming in to talk about health, not just to the guys but to the girls as well. But if we can normalise that, the hope is that you're not going to get somebody like me who is in their 30s embarrassed to go to the doctors because they found a lump on their testicles. I delayed my appointment for about a month just through embarrassment, because I thought, again, that it's going to be nothing, it's going to be fine. I'm a bit embarrassed to go and drop my trousers at the doctor's, Certainly after I did, there was, it just became natural habit for somebody who wasn't my wife to be feeling my genitals. But it was certainly like a difficult process. But if we can educate that embarrassment out of young men, I think that's going to prove to be beneficial in the long run. And I think what you guys do with the foundation is your mission is very similar. In fact, it's the exact same as what ours is up here with Cahonas, and it just helps kind of not just raise that awareness, but show that it's okay to talk about these things. And as young men, that you shouldn't be embarrassed. You should you're proactive about your health in every other aspect. Why not be proactive, especially when it's so easy to do? The check, you don't need any equipment, you just need your hands and 2 minutes of your time, and it could potentially save your life. Exactly, yeah. I say that in the thing all the time. You get the giggles, and it's like, but it's true. Like, as guys, we just literally will be sitting with our hands in our pants, and it's like, yeah, but it's if we can teach you, no, this is how you actually do that check. It's always going to be beneficial for you.
Yeah, well, we've got this e-calendar, so you can just subscribe on the website, and it drops a reminder for free into your calendar on your phone every month. So on the first of the month, you'll get a reminder to go check your balls, in the shower, or that day, and it starts to get people to go, oh yeah, they must do that, and then hopefully it will become just a regular occurrence, and it's something that you can do as often, and like we always say, it doesn't matter who checks as long as someone checks. So just have some fun with it as well if need be. It doesn't matter. It's just staying on top of that one thing that is very serious.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, how did you, what drew you to creating the foundation, after Dylan's passing? Was it something that you had thought about soon after, or was it something that, just came as a, well, there isn't enough education around this, so let's get on top of this and jump on that?
Yeah, I definitely did want to do something in his memory. I thought initially I thought I wanted to do something around sport, you know, bringing together, the Perth, the Australian connection and the West Ham connection, do something around that. But, where we took Dylan home to lay him to rest, and it became so evident that nobody knew about testicular cancer and what Dylan had gone through and the signs and symptoms, it was pretty easy then to decide that was going to be our direction, that we wanted to take the DT38, because, like I said, his passing wasn't in vain. And it really has given myself a focus and Taylor a focus, because, we hear so many wonderful stories about, when people reach out and say, oh, thank you so much, you've saved my life. If it wasn't for the message that you delivered, I wouldn't have been able to go on and do this. And I've just been diagnosed. And, we recently did an event with Paolo Di Canio, and I think we had about 1,200 people there, and 8 mates got together and decided they all go get tested. And one of the guys had testicular cancer, and so hopefully that is catching it early for him.
Yep.
And, hopefully it means that, he's going to be fine. But, it's just little things like that not only is hopefully we've saved that young man's life, but his 8 mates around him are now going to be very, very conscious of the fact that they need to check on a regular basis because one of their mates is, being diagnosed. So, I go into all of my talks with the understanding that somebody needs to hear my message, and it might not be because they're going to get testicular cancer, but because somebody will confide in them, or they'll be a dad one day, or they'll need to pass that message on. And so, I enjoy delivering those messages, partly because I like the idea of watching men squirm as well. When you're talking about their testicles, their legs get clinched together and they get a bit embarrassed, but I don't mind that at all. It's it's just so it was a pretty easy. Once all his friends and that said, we have no idea what Dylan was going through. It was a pretty easy direction for us to take it.
Yeah, and it's so powerful to be able to do that as well. And did that help in terms of, having that legacy for Dylan? Did that help you in your emotional recovery and grief as well, as a mother, like losing her son at such a young age? Is that something that was able to help you kind of mentally as well?
Yeah, I believe, I definitely, it definitely helped, to be able to focus on it, to be able to, be distracted with it, be pulled away from, the fact that there was laughter missing in your house, or that, there was, one less person in your home at that particular time. It definitely helped us to realign our focus and put our energies into something that was meaningful, and I'm overwhelmed at the legacy pieces that that Dylan has left behind. And as a mum, I don't get to see him around the football environment. It's not a place where mums go. So to see that these pieces have been left in memory, suggests that he had a huge impact in these places. And I'm very grateful. I would get a message from Karen Brady, and she'd say, "Oh, do you mind if we name the Academy Award after your son? Do you mind if we name the Learning Centre after Dylan?" And I'm just like, I was overwhelmed at the legacy pieces that he has had in his memory now, and none of them solicited at all, just based on purely on the character that Dylan was, and the the attributes and the loving of life that he had, even going through what he was going through. He just took everyone on such a positive journey with him that, I know that his teammates go, well, I can't be even bothered about something so small as this when, I've got Dylan and as an example of how to get over, adversity and how to deal with something that is so challenging. So, yeah, I know he's left a mark on a lot of people for sure.
Yeah, and it's very evident as well, and doing my research as well, as part of my role in hosting this podcast, and it's quite amazing the legacy that he has left. And again, like you say, it's testament to his character, that he was so beloved, because there's so much out there that is attributed to his name. The fact that West Ham retired his shirt number as well, that's massive as well. And I think I asked the question about starting the foundation and things like that, because I think some people would think that throwing yourself into the subject of like testicular cancer when you've been through such a traumatic experience with it would be detrimental. But I found that I didn't always work for the charity. I was working in NHS, and I found my lump because of Cahonas, Scotland's self-check guide. And I thought at the time they were this, a typical big charity with lots of employees, and I reached out to them, much like messages that you've received yourself, just to say, I found this lump because of your self-check guide. Thank you so much for saving my life. Not knowing that it was just the CEO and founder, Richie, still working his full-time job, doing the charity on a voluntary basis, and, him, reading this message while he was at his work, to then, this wee guy has just went, "You saved my life." And I think that really, and he's told me this, it really kind of made him have this sense of pride, and that he was doing the right thing by starting the charity as well. But I think also for me, taking that leap from working in the NHS to being the community engagement officer, to having the chance to be this podcast host, as weird as that sounds for me to say, but I think being in it and spreading the message has actually been really cathartic for me. It could have been that it was all doom and gloom, and you're just talking about cancer, and you're talking about the thing that was quite traumatic for you. But even talking to people like yourself and the other guests and other testicular cancer survivors who I didn't meet until I started this job, it's been really cathartic, and it's really helped. And I think that that obviously shines through yourself as well, that there is this, there's always going to be this deep sadness, but you're still getting to do something so positive. Is that kind of how you would describe your feeling on that?
Yeah, exactly. Even probably using the word empowering a little bit, because it's all consuming at times, isn't it? Obviously I don't, I'm only on the outside looking in, like you and Dylan, you guys went through it, but to be able to talk about it, to be able to not let it consume you, to be able to stay on top of the mental health side of it is empowering. And, it's a wonderful thing that, you as a survivor is doing as well, because people want to know that you can survive this disease, and you're testament to that. I'm a grieving mother, and that scares them, but you give them hope as well. So, there's the two sides to look at it, and I think both of them are very, very empowering. You get people off their, I'm there to get people off their bums to go and say, delay is deadly, get educated, guys, because this can happen to you, and you're here to say, hey, you can win this battle. And I think it's a really powerful message.
It definitely is, and I find that like you going in as as somebody who's grieving and able to send this message out to get guys to go straighten up and go, okay, this is something that I better pay attention to. And I find that when I do my talks, I'll always start off with a slide that's it's a picture of me while I was going through chemo. So I'm bald, no beard, really skinny looking, and you see the same type of thing. It's like, oh, this guy's been through this, and it does actually have an impact, because you do, like, especially you'll know yourself going into schools and speaking to younger men. there is that kind of, ooh, giggle, type of issue. But actually, the minute that you say, this is me, this is how I looked, they go, oh. And the attentiveness just goes right up. And I've always found that, I think maybe it's more a new generation thing where they're a little bit more concerned with health. They
No,
seem
I
to
think,
be.
I agree with you in that aspect. I think that, they've become a little bit more, obviously there's a lot more platforms to be able to communicate with, with social media and all that. So, you're able to get the message out there. They're able to see things, a lot easier. It's a daily thing on their phones. So the ability to communicate is a lot greater for sure. But yeah, it is definitely something that I notice too. They do sit up and take notice of, and yeah, just who knows who we're creating in terms of the next person that's going to be driven and raising awareness and just capable of leading the next group of people and the next group for change, because these talks are very empowering no matter which angle you come from. I think they're very empowering.
Oh, definitely. And in terms of kind of future goals for yourself and for the foundation, what's the big aspirations for you guys now?
I have some ideas that I wanted to bring to fruition, and just to also help support the ability to diagnose and that sort of thing. Just reaching more people on a more of a global scale. A message. It's just all about I want to get it back into the schools. I want to get the community nurses when they bring your baby home. I want them talking about the possibility of testicular cancer with with your babies, with your boys. Just getting everybody talking about this message. I know when I brought Dylan and Taylor home, the community nurses came, they come through and I don't know if they do that so much now, but it was a real big thing back then. But no one talks about young boys, because my understanding is the only thing that's really been linked with testicular cancer is undescended testes, and anybody that has that, they should be receiving that message that testicular cancer is linked to this. This is how you check. Just keep an eye on it. That's all you have to do. Just be aware that when something does come up, you need to insist on an ultrasound. So, yeah, it's just, I just think that it's a wonderful opportunity that I have to, impart Dylan's message onto men's health and, the evolution of men's health in a way, the awareness. So yeah, when you mentioned about your CEO, how you wrote to him and, there he is still doing the job. Well, I was very similar to him 12 months ago. I had a full-time job, 10, 12 hours a day, and this was my hobby. And I was like, no, I want this to be my main focus. So I gave all that up, and, people still question my sanity to this day about doing so. But no, I want to take the charity as far as it can go, and I can't do that when I'm only, doing it on a part-time basis.
What advice would you give to family members, mothers who are either at the start, middle, or the kind of at the end of these testicular cancer journeys? Is there any advice that you would have liked to have got, or that you can impart now to people going through this?
I suppose for me, looking at Dylan being as normal as possible helped me. Him walking out the door and coming home after training and going, come on, let's go to golf, let's go to, just doing as much as you can with your child will keep the day normal, will keep, it will keep it becomes special. In my situation, I wish I'd taken more photos. I wish I had so much more, footage of Dylan and us, and his brother, because you never know when you don't have it. But just getting up every day and being as positive as you can, because if they're around positivity and around positive vibes, then that's I think that's half the battle won, because it's very easy to, not get out of bed. It's very easy to go, woe is me, why is this happening to me? Well, it is happening to you, and be the best example for you can be for your son, or whoever's going through whatever. Be that strong, best example you can be, because at the end of the day, that's all you've got to give, really. You can't change the fact. You can't help them fight it. You can only just give them the tools to be as positive and upbeat as you possibly can. So make that environment as healthy for them as they can have.
No, it was honestly, it's my pleasure to meet yourself, and I think having this different of a podcast in terms of, like, it's clearly, the testicular cancer can be a very male dominated guest list. So, to have that perspective, from yourself and being able to talk to me, it's great. And any, chances that, yourselves at the foundation and Cahonas can get to even work together, there's always opportunity there. I think, testicular cancer and charities who are shouting that message it's such a niche thing that, any help we can give each other is always going to be beneficial. I agree. Thank you so much for your time.
I think that'd be great. Yeah, I think it'd be great, because I think, like I said, the message you give and the message I give, it gives people that sense of urgency to look after themselves, and a sense of hope that, they've done the right thing, and it's, but ultimately it's out of their hands, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's all, our paths are mapped out. So it's all, you can only do the best you can do at the time. And I think I'd love to work with you guys to, to deliver that message. I think it'd be a fantastic and powerful one for sure.